Okay, so here, you take the square root of 49 at 7. When the negative is outside, that means your answer is going to be negative. Okay? You take the square root of 200, you just do it on your calculator. Usually the safe bet is to round to 2 places. If it doesn't say, that's the standard, round to 2 places. Okay? Here, the square root of 121 is 11, but on the outside it says you have to leave both the positive and the negative version. Okay? And you could have written it like this, 11 comma negative 11. That's the same thing. But you're going to see a lot of this, so I want you to be comfortable with what that means. It means positive 11, negative 11. Both of them are answers. Yeah? Okay. All right, so the first part of Chapter 10 is graphing. Apparently, you don't have to do that. So they're starting us at 10.4, which is kind of nice. Solving equations with square roots is what you're doing today. So here's a couple things I stuck in here. When you have to insert a square root to solve, then you must consider both the positive and the negative versions. And I'll tell you what I mean, you'll see an example in a second. The second thing is you can't take the square root of a negative number to have a real number solution. When that happens, you write no solution. If you tried to take the square root of negative 2 on your calculator, what would it say? What would it say? Put your phone away, Keely, please. It would say error, because you're going to learn all about imaginary numbers in Algebra 2. So for every number that you have so far, you can't take the square root of the negative. All right? So we got to solve for C here, which is just like solving an equation. It's just this one extra step we have. So we want to get C by itself, so the first thing we do is add 25 to both sides. Okay? C squared equals 25. Now, I don't want C squared. I want C, so what do? No. It's the opposite of squaring. Somebody said it, I think. Square root. Oh, so I'm inserting a square root to solve. So I have to then consider both positive and negative 5, because the square root of 25 is 5. That's what I mean by when you insert the square root to solve, you must consider both positive and negative. Okay? Why is that? Nathan?
Positive, negative?
Yeah. Chuck, what do you think?
Because you don't know what C is yet, and it could be positive or negative.
It could be, because what's 5 times 5?
5.
And what's, no, 25, right? And what's negative 5 times negative 5? So they're both answers. They're both solutions. Okay? All right, so let's try another one here. So I got to subtract 12. Subtract 12. 5w squared equals negative 20. Divide by 5. W squared equals negative 4. What? Okay, so I'm going to insert a square root, but what's the problem? This can't happen. I don't know how to spell Uh-oh. Something, whatever. That can't happen because you can't take the square root of a negative number. So what would I write here for an answer? No solution. Okay, no solution. All right, let's see what happens here. I know you're excited. Minus 11, minus 11. 2x squared equals 0. Divide by 2. Yeah, you can do that. What's 0 divided by 2? Okay. So I'll insert the square root. But is there really such a thing as plus or minus 0? There really isn't. Just your answer is just going to be 0 for this. You could say plus or minus, it doesn't matter, but it's really kind of irrelevant because the square root of 0 is 0. Okay? So far? Okay, let's do a little bit more. You know we got to throw some fractions in there. Okay, so I'm going to divide both sides by 25 because, again, I'm trying to get x by itself. So I have x squared equals 16 over 25, but what do you notice about both these numbers? Do you notice anything? They're both perfect squares, right? They're both perfect squares. So, okay, I don't want x squared. I got to take the square root of both sides. So let me show you how you can do this. Instead of just whipping it on the calculator, you can consider this. It's the same thing as the square root of 16 over the square root of 25. Do you know what the square root of both of those numbers are? 4 and 5. So x would be plus or minus 4/5. Because we inserted the square root, we have to keep that plus or minus in there. Somebody last hour said, does it make a difference where you put the plus or minus? So let me ask you a question. Is that the same as that, the same as that? It is. This is either a positive fraction or a negative fraction. Positive fraction or a negative fraction. Positive fraction or negative fraction. It doesn't make a difference where it's sitting. Okay, do this one on your own, just like that. Just like this one. Could you leave it as a decimal? You could, but since they're both perfect squares, it's easy just to leave it as a fraction like that. Okay? Questions on that? Oh, did you do 3 1/3? Plus or 1 minus, plus or minus 3 2/3. 3 1/3, right? 3 1/3. Yeah, that's fine. As long as you remember the plus or minus, that's kind of the important part there. All right, let's do this one and see what happens here. Minus 64, minus 64. Anybody seeing a problem already? It's a negative. But if you keep going and you don't see it quite yet, you're going to get to this part right here. And then you have to use the square root to solve. So you say, uh-oh, I can't do that. That's not possible. That's not possible, so it's no solution. No solution. Okay? All right. So this is kind of like the first set of practice problems you're going to get is this kind of stuff. It doesn't get too much different, just a little bit. All right, turn it over. Now, when you see stuff like this, it says solve the equation, round the solutions to the nearest hundredth if necessary. That is your clue that you're going to use the calculator. Okay? That's a clue that you're going to use the calculator to help you with this. So, again, we got to get x squared by itself. The first thing I would do is subtract 4. X squared equals 10. That's not a perfect square, is it? So when you don't have a perfect square, then you're probably using the calculator. So you take the square root of both sides. So I'm inserting the square root. Then I go to my calculator. Everybody find out what the square root of 10 is. And you're rounding to the nearest hundredth, so make sure you do that right. Yes? Don't forget the plus and minus, because you're using that square root to help you solve. Not too bad? Okay, let's do another one. Plus 1 plus 1. You get 3k squared equals 1. You got to divide by 3 to get k squared by itself, and you get k squared equals 1/3. Now, the reason this is in here is because you kind of got to be careful on those calculators. If I were you, I would enter that 1/3 as a fraction. Because sometimes the calculator might take the square root of 1 first, which is 1, and then divide by 3, and you're not going to get the right answer. So you have to tell it to take the square root of 1/3 altogether. So that's why you put it as, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the calculator.
Put it as a decimal.
This will be a decimal.
Or, I mean, could you enter it?
No, because it's 0.3 repeating, so you should enter it as 1/3. Otherwise you won't. You can't enter endless amount of 3's. So you should get this. That's rounded to the nearest hundredth. Is that what you got? It was 0.577 something? If you didn't, then you got to enter it the right way until you do get that. And I can help you if it's not working. Yes, no, maybe? Okay, let's try one more. Actually, why don't you guys do this one on your own? Do that one on your own, see what you get. Slightly different. I want you to stop always before you leap. Take a look at this. How many people want to distribute? It's very tempting, but you can't. Because this is x minus 2 squared, which means it's x minus 2 times x minus 2. You cannot distribute that 2. It's not the same thing. So you have to be careful. You have to look first. Okay, you cannot distribute here. Because of that square outside of there. You can't distribute. So let's just pretend there's some unknown value in there. What would I do first in solving this, do you think? It's 2 times that stuff, so what would I do? Chuck?
Divide each other by 2.
Fantastic. Let's get rid of this 2 outside here. It's 2 times this stuff, so I can divide by 2, and that cancels out. And then I have x minus 2 squared equals 9. Oh, well, I just got some value in here that's squared, and I need to find out what that is. So what would my next step be? Get rid of the square, which would be to do what? Yeah, you can square root everything now at this point. Okay, you can do this. Squaring and square root cancel each other out, so those two cancel each other out, and you're just left with x minus 2 equals plus or minus 3. So this is where it gets a little odd. I mean, this is just a little kind of a new thing here. Okay, so this says to me that x minus 2 equals positive 3 and x minus 2 equals negative 3. So I'm going to set them up separately. That's positive 3 and this is negative 3. There's 2 values of x that is going to be a solution for this equation. 2 values. So I add 2 to both sides. X equals 5. And add 2. X equals negative 1. So these are both solutions. Okay, that's kind of where that plus and minus comes in. When you insert that square root to solve, you have to consider that there's both versions here. Now, somebody tell me, what does it mean that they're solutions? What does that mean? To what? What are they solutions to? I'm sorry, what? Yeah, if I stuck 5 in here, this side would equal 18. If I stuck negative 1 in here for x, this side would equal 18. Makes it true. Okay? All right, the same idea. I want you to do this one on your own. Same process. Give it a try. And you're going to get a decimal to work with, and that's okay. All right, so starting up here, I divided by 4. You got that, yes? Then I took the square root of both sides because I'm just trying to find out what's in there and it's being squared. So I can undo it by taking the square root. And then I get q minus 3 equals that. Square root of 7 is that. Now, it's plus or minus 2.65. So I have to set it equal to both positive 2.65 and negative 2.65. And then add 3 to both sides. I didn't actually show you that. Add 3 to both sides. And you end up with this and this. Yes, so, no. My couch, peanut gallery over there.
Where'd you get the minus 2 from?
There's no minus 2 on there, dude.
Mine ran on the other column. It says both solutions.
We'll talk about that later. So these are both solutions, okay? Let's just do this one together, and then we'll be done. What's the first step, you guys? Everybody tell me, what's the first step? Right here. Divide by 3. That gets rid of this 3 out here. Then I have t plus 5 squared equals 8. Square root both sides. That helps me get rid of these things right here. And then I just have t plus 5 equals plus or minus 2.83. I had to round up for that one. Okay, then I'm going to split this up. There's not going to be a lot of room here. T plus 5 equals 2.83 positive, and t plus 5 equals negative 2.83. It's tight, tight squeeze. You can have 2 negative answers here, and that's okay. You can have 2 negative answers. Subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, t equals negative 2.17 over there. Draw a line down here. And then subtract 5 here. And t equals negative 7.83.
Sure about that?
Okay?
I misread this.
Bye.
Have a wonderful, spectacular day.
All right. Boom.